So let's start. So we will be now focusing on the part that we are left. So we were discussing about the productivity. So now we will be focusing on what were the sectors which we took over the other sectors, and when we had undertaken liberalization measures, then which all sectors became laggard and which sectors became the leading sectors. In the light of those developments, we will be now focusing on the productivity. So I found this particular table quite useful. So the reference will remain the same like previous lecture. So you can refer the same reference and reading materials, and you can also go through those papers, and in case you did not find those references mentioned, so I have cited wherever I have referred any table or any text, I have cited, I have given the proper reference to that, so you can refer that also. So Jan H. In the paper Manufacturing and Employment Pattern in India since 1990s that appeared in Indian Journal of Industrial Relations, it is one of the important document to go through, and it highlights provides a quite deep insight about the productivity growth in India. So the fixed capital per unit that we see, it shows about the investment of capital. So fixed capital that you can see, so 1990s it was just 121 lakh. It increased in 2009-10 up to 850 lakhs, which means that there is a huge amount of capital going into the fixed asset, which means that there is a capital augmenting process taking place. Persons per unit, if you see, it is quite stagnant, and even it has gone down. So during 2000 we had a 91, we had 75, and then it has gone down 60 and 65 and 74. And then we have gross value added per unit per lakh. This is how. So you can also see that it is output per unit per lakh, whatever we are going for fixed capital, it is also increasing, which means that firms are now orienting more towards the post reform period saw a lot of capital intensive investments, and most of the firms which were in the services sector, and even in case of manufacturing, certain sectors were quite focusing on going for expansion and investing more in capital. So GVA fixed capital, you can see that it has increased 0.46 to 0.60. There is a small moderation which is 0.51 here. Otherwise, in most of the cases it has gone up. Now labor productivity, you can see that it is 0.74, 1.59. So whatever the output produced per person engaged, so the per labor, so output per labor you can see 0.74. This has also improved. So that might be because this side the capital investment has been more, so capital intensive the machinery. So it may not be sure that whether the labor employment has gone or not, but output has gone up. So that could be that one the labor has become more productive by using technology, or maybe it may happen that earlier 10 people were producing 50 output, but now only 5 people are producing that 50 output. So that was so that kind of trend we can see here also. So after liberalization, this has been the common trend, and it can be seen even in the modern era also. And if you compare from the historical perspective, then at that point of time our focus was on creating employment, investing in certain activities, just to make sure that the domestic populace should be happy. Some welfare oriented policies were undertaken, though after some time it became burden, and we had to think about we had to think about the efficiency of those institutions. But in post liberalization phase, when we opened our economy for global competition and global and firms had to compete with global markets, at that time we can see that this has been the global trend. So we can see that compared to all other countries, the firms in India also, especially in manufacturing, they were taking measures. As per the author Jan, he mentions that certain sectors, for example metals and all, were overtaken by the food and other small scale industries, and that resulted in the increase in the capital, but the output increased, GVA increased, but it did not materialize in terms of increase in employment. So in post 1990s, the growth that we see in terms of industrial development, it has not been very supportive in terms of labor employment, but in terms of growth, output, and in terms of numbers, it has become quite attractive, and it has contributed a lot. So that has to be appreciated, and that comes out from this table. Though there are arguments for and against. For says that it was required and it was the time that we should have gone for the more capital intensive technologies, but then the opponents say that we have to think about the welfare of the labor, and certain labor laws were also not, and at that point of time the policy makers should have paid more attention on focusing on moving or having the smooth transition from the labor intensive to capital intensive. So the sudden rise of petrochemical and petroleum and chemical fertilizer and all these sectors led to the increase in employment, but it was not that much. They were more focusing on the capital intensive activities. So here it is, I try to compare. So sectoral average annual growth that we see in real value added organized manufacturing sector, then we see that in 1980s we had the growth in radio, television, communication equipment of 28.1%, but it reduced to a 1.8, and this was also one of the major and second, we have food product and beverages. This has been also moderated. 1990s it came down heavily, 8.6. Then wearing apparel, then we have a dressing and dyeing of fur, then it also declined. What we can see in terms of coke, petroleum products and nuclear fuel, not that much labor intensive, it has gone up 19.4. Similarly, we can see furniture and other manufacturing, it has also gone, it has seen tremendous growth, 29.7%. Wood and wood product 1990s, that might be because of the restructuring process that we were observing in certain industries. Fabricated metal products, then we have motor vehicles, there is tremendous growth, then we have electrical machinery. So you can see that all capital intensive machinery incentive sectors started doing well, and this resulted in increase in output, better growth, more GVA, value additions were more, but in terms of increase in employment, it has not been that great. So 1991 trap that we see, we often say that 1991 was a trap for India because we opened our economy, but at the same time we had to experience certain distortions which took almost a decade to recover, and then we had to go for a skill transformation, a complete skill transformation, and for that we had to go for new manufacturing policy in 2011. So we realized very late that when we are opening our economy, we have to think about the skill set of the labor force, that how they will be competing with the internationally competitive firms, and how our domestic firms will be competing with them. So we did not pay that much attention, but in 2011 when we realized that we have to do it, so we had to go for new manufacturing policy. This I have taken from annual reports 2019-20. So this appears to be that agriculture forestry is having the share of 14.6. This is the, and then manufacturing it is 18.1. 2011-12 it was 17.4. So just for the recent figures I have given, and certain sectors in services, you can see that all the services are showing some increased trend, or they have been consistent. So in this particular table, what comes out is that the manufacturing is quite a stagnant kind of sector. Even construction, we can see during 2011-12 it was 9.6. It has come down, it is still coming down. And mining and quarrying, we can see it is still quite stagnant, but other sectors, especially in services, financial services, then we have real estate, then here real estate ownership, dwellings, and the professional services, it has done well. So service sector we are seeing more of a contribution than the manufacturing. So this has been one of the major contribution. Then I thought I should be also focusing on certain developments related to the wage law, because we discussed the labor policies. So we should be also discussing the different wage laws in the recent period that we have designed. So since we have already discussed during when we were discussing agriculture sector, then at that time we had discussed state list, union list, and the concurrent list. So labor falls in the area of concurrent list, which is the subject of both state and center. Center and states both can decide about the structure of the policy and may also differ on certain aspects, but since it is concurrent list, so central government takes over in certain cases, are free to adjust their requirement with the illustrated policies or implemented policies of the central government. National Commission of Labour was set up in 2002 to streamline the rules and regulations in the existing law, and this law was required because for the first time we had gone for some kind of regulatory changes made to the wages. Then we had to go for industrial relations, how the employer and employee should have the relation, whether the employer has full control on the employee, and whether employee can go for a strike, and those things. Then there is a social security dimension that we have always considered as one of the prerequisites of the labor laws, because in India we, as a welfare state, we always go for contributory social security programs. And then occupational safety, health hazard, and the working conditions. So these are all labor laws that designed. Ministry of Labour and Employment in 2019 introduced 4 bills on labor codes, which includes codes on wages, industrial relations, social security, occupational health and hazard. So this is what considered to be the best document that we have to refer. So and all these codes were passed by the Parliament in 2020, and it has been notified through gazettes. So now there is a whole lot of controversy about whether this particular act will, or whether the implementation of these policies will be conducive for the labor. The experts working in the area of labor, they say that for the market it is good, because now we are in the era where we are focusing more on the market oriented economy. So labor law may not be that strict, but there is always an apprehension that with the implementation of such a market oriented labor laws, giving more or I would say pro employer labor laws, there is high chances that they can be exploited by the labor. There is a whole lot of controversy about how this wage code is going to be decided. The minimum wage floor that we have, that central government decides how it is going to be decided. So there is a whole lot of controversy about this, but at present we have gone for a complete revamping of our labor laws, not only on wage codes but also on industrial relations and others. During pandemic 2020, government had gone for suspension of labor laws, and then in certain states it has been restored, but in certain states it is still relaxed. Just to make sure that we have certain activities supporting the lockdown and other official measures undertaken at that point of time. And there was a lot of apprehension that point of time there will be some firms moving from our neighboring countries to India, and that also gave us one opportunity to revise our labor laws immediately. But at that time also we created and it became a controversial issue because it was quite haphazard, and it was not very clear that how these particular labor laws will be relaxed, and how it will be, to what extent labor will be impacted, and how government is going to ensure that they are not having any wrong intentions in going for such type of relaxation. Then in 2011, as I mentioned, we have gone for national manufacturing policy, what is called. It was one of the ambitious programs of the government. Under that, it was decided that the manufacturing sector, as I just referred it 2 slides back, that the share of manufacturing is just 18%. It was decided that the share of manufacturing should go up to 25%, and it should create additional 100 million jobs by 2022. And then it was also decided to have a national investment and manufacturing zones. So because of that, we had a special economic zones in the country, in different parts of the country, and then special economic zones became the hub of economic growth and development, export promotion zones. So this national manufacturing policy gave a lot of emphasis on not just in terms of manufacturing, but it also gave emphasis on green energy, the encouragement to have a green energy, renewable energy applications in the manufacturing process. It also gave importance to how we can go for technological upgradation. There were a lot of incentive given for mutual collaborations and even foreign collaborations. So these are the part of the new manufacturing policy that we implemented in 2011. Some states took the lead and Gujarat became the hub of pharmaceutical industry, chemical exports. Tamil Nadu experienced a heavy increase in production and surge in employment in motor vehicles, trailers and semi-trailers during 2007 to 2020, and it is continuing. There is a full lot of impetus given on the IT industry, special economic zones. Then you have a semiconductors, special economic zones. So each and every state, whatever strength they have, they are competing on to create a special economic zones. But there are certain pro and cons of that we'll be discussing at the end. So let's focus on this particular part. So for the first time in national manufacturing policy, we had gone for certain rules, a certain revamping of the skill set of our labor force, because most of the major industries players were complaining to the government that they are not able to get the workforce required for their reoriented manufacturing process, and they are not able to compete. And in order to make sure that they get the skill set, the workers should have the proper skill set, there should be a training program launched. So based on the request of the industry, Government of India incorporated that. So most of the ITIs, Industrial Training Institute, plus we have Polytechnic Institute. So these institutes were given extra money to develop and expand and to reorient the demand from the industries and train the students and the future workers in the similar manner, so that they can support the industrial growth process of the large industrial houses. And this has resulted in a positive impact on the industrial output, as we can see that the vocational trainers are being employed by large number of industry. Though we have thousands of engineering colleges, but the skill set that is required by the institutes, there is a huge gap, and that's why it was suggested and it was implemented by government also at that time. Then we had for innovation and technological collaboration, it was Technology Acquisition and Development Fund. It was set up to promote consumption of renewable energy. As I told, the green energy were given incentive, and this Technological Acquisition and Development Fund was created just to have a collaboration across technological development that is conducive for the growth and development in industrial sector. So the first special economic zone was introduced on April 1, 2000, and separate Special Economic Zone Act was enacted in 2005, which became operational in February 10, 2006. Under the new act, central government became simply the facilitator, and it had defined certain regulatory norms, and space was open and there were a lot of space given to the private sector for the development of special economic zones. And these special economic zones enjoyed the fiscal incentive for 15 years. So first 5 years, 100% tax exemptions, then 50% for the next 5 years, then 50% from the whatever you export and whatever you retain from that. So for 15 years, these special economic zones and export promotion zones were given incentives in terms of setting up businesses. Some states did well, and some states were laggard. For those states which were poor on socioeconomic parameters, they did not pick up, but some states which were doing average or they were good, they took the lead. And we can see that there is a stark difference now. So you can see that in 1995, the number of special economic zones, export promotion zones, EPZ and SEZs, you have a central government 7. It was the area acquired by 894. So 1,000 acre area hectare was considered as the need required for this. So area was 894. The multi-product, so type of zone that was multi-product 1, by-product 1. You can see that by 2006-11, we have the number of special economic zones gone up to 581. And the area it has gone up to 63,608, and multi-product we had 24, then sector specific we had 164, and the service we had 371. So we can see from one multi-product, and byproduct 1 in 1995-2000. During 1995-2000, we have increased the multi-product 24. Then we have a sector specific 164, 371. So this shows that the tremendous improvement in this, and private sector has taken a lead. Here in private sector in 2000, during 2006 to 11, it is 462. I have taken it from Handbook of the Indian Economy 21st Century, and so from the Goel, and also on the SEG India website. In terms of employment, if you see, then it becomes really interesting to see. I have updated this data till September 2020, and you will find that in 1998 it was only 25,625, but in September 2020 it has gone up to 1,80,485, right. And transition phase that we had, in that it is 96,918. Newly notified that we have, it is about 96,65,515 employment in terms of actual numbers. So in total it is 22 lakhs. Then here we have the investment. In terms of investment, in terms of billion rupee, you will find that now it has gone up to 5,951. In terms of the investment that we have made, it was just 8.97, but now it has gone up to 5,951 billion rupee investment in this. So you can see that the certain orientations that we made. So in the beginning we were just going for blind development of industrial development, but now when we reoriented, keeping in mind the external outlook change, we find that there is a whole lot of effort to expand the industrial base in the country. And total national exports. So this is the national exports that we have in terms of billion, and you will find that in terms of SEGs we have this. In terms of percentage share, in 2018-19 it is 21%. So which means that from 3%, from 2005 to 6, it has gone up to 21%. So this shows that how this particular policy has benefited. So India manufacturing policy 2011, that's why it is considered another watershed era for the industrial development, because we had to reorient, reframe the industrial production process, and we had to give importance not only to industrial development in the conventional context, but also in the contemporary context. Then there are certain positive side of the industrialization and special economic zones that we have. For example, introduction to new industries. Some states which were good in certain activities, but they did not have a proper scope to expand that activity. So this special economic zone gave incentive to establish those sectors which were quite a trademark for those states. For example, for jewelry industries, Gujarat has done well, and that's why it has set up hardware exports, jewelry and all, and further in some states, like for example in Haryana you have Gurgaon, then in UP you have Noida, there also you have a special economic zones, especially in Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, there you have, even in Telangana, there you have a high-tech city in Telangana is one special economic zone that gave boost to the industrialization process, and this also became one of the new industries that you have. Then here you have the entrepreneurship development. So in terms of entrepreneurship development, what happens is that some measures were undertaken by the SEGs in terms of standard design factories, and they were also given certain incubator facilities, and because of that some ideas and some individuals took lead, and they had the capacity, and they were given incentive to establish a firm, and it became a success. So Moser Bayer is one such example where it became one of the largest supplier of CDs and different devices. And also in some areas some individuals took interest and developed industries, and they later became one of the largest supplier. Promotion of agglomeration is one aspect. For example, because of this special economic zones, we can see that development of Gurgaon, Noida, IT hubs of Hyderabad, then we have Kochi, then in Bangalore you have Whitefield and all those areas. In Ahmedabad you have a pharmaceutical and textile. In Gandhinagar again you have IT. In Bharuch you have chemicals. In Kutch you have heavy metals and logistics. Regional diversification has also become one area, because one area gave one incentive to expand this particular context. So, for example, Rangareddy district has become one area where you have agglomeration happening. Surat in Gujarat, Mohali in Punjab and all. There are negative sides of this, for example, loss of agriculture land, loss of tax revenues because you give lot of incentive, regional disparities because you simply focus on one area and not another, sectoral imbalance and skewed export base because you are focusing on certain activities but not the conventional one, labor and environmental hazards, certain areas in certain working conditions, in certain special economic zones the working conditions are not that good and laborers are exposed to certain rules that were not conducive. So I have taken it from Goel. If you want, you can refer it. Due to shortage of time, I am stopping it here. Thank you so much.